Well, I want to welcome Elgin McCann and Don Richmond from the far west in Kelowna, British Columbia. Don, I wondered if I could ask you to introduce yourself and how you and Elgin know each other and maybe some of the things that you've been involved in together.
Good afternoon, Don. It's great to be with you. Elgin and I are here in my office here in Kelowna, and I serve Hockey Ministries as their British Columbia representative with chapels and hockey camps and the like. And so it's been a great time with Hockey Ministries. I think officially for it's going to go about 17 years now, Don. So it's been a while. And during my time in Kelowna, I met Elgin McCann, and Elgin actually attends the church that I'm part-time on staff. And so we're in the office here. And so I've gotten to know Elgin and his wife, Debbie, and some of their family for a number of years. And so it's a real honor and a privilege to be here today and to have Elgin with us.
Elgin, I realized only this morning that you were the first ever draft choice from the Western Hockey League to an NHL team. And that's a great accomplishment, and drafted in the first round by the mighty Montreal Canadiens in 1967, number 8 overall. And when you heard that news, like, how did you feel?
Well, you know, Don, the amazing thing is that my favorite team through all the years has always been Montreal. Well, I'm not, maybe not right now, but when I was a kid growing up, it was Montreal, and of course, Rocket Richard was my idol. So when I got drafted by Montreal, I was really excited, and you know, I that's all I can say. I was just totally amazed, and yeah.
Okay. All right. Now you arrive in Montreal in the fall of 1967. And what was that like? Montreal Canadiens training camp, the powerhouse of the NHL. How did you feel?
A little overwhelmed. Just walking in the old Forum, which I think you can say because you played there as a junior, the atmosphere in the building was just unbelievable. All the pictures of the old stars all around the walkway, around the arena and everything. So it was like a dream come true, and I was just really thrilled to be there. I was a right winger, but they had me in playing center, and I got to play against Jean Beliveau. And of course, he was probably the premier player at that time. So it was just exciting. And then Rogie Vachon was the goaltender. And if you would remember, the year before, Rogie was out of position, and a guy had an open net, and Rogie came sliding across and caught the puck. and that's exactly what happened to me in training camp with him, you know. and then Toe Blake took me aside by the net and spoke to me a little bit about it and what to do and everything. And actually, you know, that was a real thrill too, having Toe Blake talk to me.
Well, your pro career, which was a very interesting career, but took you to places like Houston, Memphis, Amarillo, New Haven, Saginaw, Columbus, Kalamazoo, Brandon, Prince George. How would you summarize, or is it possible, those years and life in the minors?
Basically, what I dropped out of high school to play hockey, which was a foolish thing to do, but anyway, so I had no trade, no education or anything, and I was basically looking for a place where I could get a job, and that did happen in Kalamazoo actually, but it fell through. So my life was things that were looking good, and then they just didn't quite work out. And so I guess that would be the frustrating thing of playing in the minors. And in those years too, we didn't have a player representative. So they just, they just ship you around and kind of like a cattle, I guess, you're going here, you're going to do this and whatnot. So that was a little frustrating, and I made some big mistakes. And that one year, my second year, I quit and went home, and I should never have done that. And so that probably hurt me more than anything else. But you have two sides of it, where it's a game that I loved, and yet there's those difficulties you hated sometimes. But yeah, lots of challenges.
Elgin, what were the circumstances and who were the people that led you eventually to receive Christ into your life?
Well, let me start off with saying that when I was 22 or 23, I'm not just sure what, I was still single, and I had come home. We were back in Manitoba, and I had come home one night late in the summer. It was a beautiful, warm summer night, and the stars were out. So I just walked down our farm, and I remember looking up at the sky, and this is out of the blue because I had no church background really at all. And I said, I wonder if there's a God out there. And it took another 10 years or so, and leading me through many things, that I finally came to know the Lord. And what happened is I was married, and my wife left me, and my son and me came back to Canada, and I went up in the Edmonton area to look for some employment. And so I thought, well, the best thing would be to look at the farm employment, and that way I could look after my son better and everything. And I had cattle. After my first year of down in the States, I had bought cattle, and that's where I wanted to be. But anyways, getting fast forward, so I ended up going to this farm employment, and there was some old guy there, and he was half deaf like I am now, and he was kind of out of it. But he said, no, there's nothing here. And so the next day I get a phone call, and it's the fellow that's the head of it. And he just said that, well, this guy, he's not on top of things, and he was just kind of filling in. But he said, I've got something for you. And he said, there's a dairy farm that they need a guy. I said, oh, okay. I didn't really want a dairy farm, but so in Stony Plain, a fellow by the name of Merrill Jesperson had a dairy farm. And we went out and visited him, and he had a talk with me. He says, I don't know how he knew that I was going to need a man, because I haven't told anybody. And anyways, he said, if you want to come and work, he says, I have a spot for you. And he said, I know my son will ask your son to come to church. Are you okay with that? And I said, yep. And under my breath, I thought, as long as you don't ask me. And anyways, so I ended up renting a house that they had, which is about 1.5 miles away. And right behind that house was a newer home that a chiropractor and his family of 4 kids and wife lived, and they were Christians. So my only exposure for most of the winter was Christians. And the chiropractor's name was Bob Brodeur. And after quite a while, he invited me to come to his place for a Bible study. And I was softened up by then, so I said, sure. And we went to his place the first night, and there was one other lady there, and his wife, and me, and Bob. And so he spoke on John 3:16. And that was good. So then the next Wednesday, we met again, spoke on the same thing. And the next Wednesday, the same thing again. And I'm thinking, we've done this for 3 times in a row. We should move on. But I didn't get it. It happened for about 5 times. And then I started asking questions, and he would answer my questions and no more. And which was exactly what the way I had to be handled. And then, I still didn't get it. The light hadn't gone on. And then I was out one day feeding outside cattle. I was pulling up to the feeder, and I had my son standing beside me on the tractor. And I pushed in the clutch just to glide up into it, and I must have hit a pile of manure or something, and it stopped on a dime, and my son went flying forward. Sorry. And he was hanging from his pant leg got caught on the brake pedal on the right-hand side. I thought, oh, I'll just reach down and I'll grab him and I'll pull him up, be okay. As I reached down to pull him up, my foot slipped off the clutch. It was snowing to beat the band, and my foot slipped off the clutch, and the tractor lunged forward. My son dropped down, and I called out to God for help. And I pushed the clutch back in, put it in reverse, and went back, and my son rolled up. And if you know the tire mark tread leaves on a snow or in mud or anything, and it went from the above his nose, at the forehead, down to his nose and across his eye, and it looked like a tire. And I thought I had run him over, and I thought I'd lost everything. My wife left, and now my son, I thought had killed him. So anyways, I jumped off the tractor and wheeled him into a truck and drove into town, which was 6 miles away. And then the doctor came out and told me everything was okay. There's no damage other than he had this big, huge cut across his head, and it all swole up and everything. And so I was just relieved, and I just broke down. Then I still didn't come to the Lord, but it wasn't too long after that one night, as I was going to bed, and I had a mattress in the bedroom on the ground and nothing else. And I crawled into bed and I just wept. And I invited the Lord, to forgive me for my sins, to come into my life and live in my heart. And I remember the warmth of his presence coming into my life. And it was, I just wept and wept and wept, but tears of joy. So that's it.
Oh, that's beautiful. And what God did to get your attention, and putting those people around you, it's just
Yeah.
amazing, isn't it? When you think about it, you were surrounded by Christians.
Yeah.
And the Lord brought you to himself.
Yeah.
And then you eventually moved, well, you got married. Maybe you want to just tell us about that and your family.
I ended up moving to Prince George. And I heard of this church. It was a full gospel church, and they were starting up a Christian school. And I thought, well, I want my son to go to a Christian school. And so I started attending that church. And they said to me, well, we've got a lot of singles in this church, and we need to get a singles group going, and maybe you could head that up for us. Well, I'd only been a Christian for 2 years, but anyway, so I said, sure. They had a list of people, and I called all these people, and one of the people on the list was my wife, Debbie, my wife now, but she was never home. And she lived with her sister and her family. And so but her sister said, keep calling, you'll get her. And so I did. I kept calling, and finally she came home. And I invited her out to the singles group, and she said, okay, sure, I'll come. And then one thing led to another, and in June of 1982, we got married. And so it'll be 41 years this June 19th that we've been married. And we're an interesting couple because all my background was athletics and sports, and she hasn't got an ounce of that in her life. She's different. She went to Bible school for 2 years, and then on to university, and became a teacher. And so she was the teacher at the Christian school that I was going. So we got to know each other through that, as well as the singles group, and we've been able to do lots of ministry together. We're a good fit that the Lord put us together. In 1985, we had our first child together, and we ended up having 6 children in 9 years.
Elgin, you've been truly blessed with a wonderful family and wife, and but you had a medical, I don't know, you'll have a better way of explaining it, that happened to you a number of years ago. I wondered if you would just share that with us.
Yeah. In 2011, I came out of a hockey practice, and I was having some trouble seeing, and so I went the next day to the doctor, and he said, "Oh, you've broken a blood vessel." But my vision kept getting worse and worse. So I went to an optometrist, and he said the same thing. And then finally, I said, "Well," the first doctor, my regular doctor, said he'd get me an appointment with an ophthalmologist, but it'll take months, and you'll be all cleaned up by then. But so I finally went back to him, and he got me an appointment with the ophthalmologist. And then I called to the ophthalmologist after a number of months, because my vision was just getting worse. And in November, I went into the ophthalmologist, and he looked at me. It took him like 15 seconds. He says, "You've got a detached retina. We need to operate." So they do that with laser. They tried 5 times to reset my retina, but couldn't do it. I got an infection in both eyes called uveitis. And they don't know what causes that, but it just came on. And then I ended up having to go to see some specialist down in Vancouver. And my eye was getting worse, and they just couldn't get it under control. And I ended up losing the sight of my right eye in the spring of 2012. And then I was seeing a uveitis specialist, and he said, "Well, we better get a scan done so we can see what's causing, or what could be causing this." And then that scan, I had another test, and they found out that I had melanoma, and they gave me a 25% chance of survival after 5 years if I had surgery and radiation first, and then surgery to remove the tumors. And I chose to deal with that on a natural basis, and but I ended up losing the sight of my left eye completely in about 2016. So it was gradual, but I knew it was coming. And I remember because I was going to go to pre-service prayer. We used to have 2 services at the time, and I'd be at pre-service prayer at 8:30 in the morning, and then the second pre-service prayer was later, and I was going to that. I remember saying to the guys in the first one that I had a talk with the Lord last night, and I told him, Lord, even if I go blind, I'm still going to love you, and so you might as well just heal me. And then I said to the guys, I said, you know what? I'm not sure that was a very good prayer because he might challenge me. But anyways, as it turned out, I did lose my eye, my sight. But over the course of the years, the melanoma, I'm cured of melanoma.
An amazing story and all that you've been through. But how do you maintain your spiritual closeness with the Lord, and not sort of get feeling bitter about having lost your eyesight, and how do you keep your spirits high and so positive?
Okay, well, I talked to Don about that before, Pastor Don here, and he's going to help me sing a little bit of a song.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Here's how it happens. Here's how it happens, Don. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of the earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace.
So what works for me is praising the Lord and worshiping the Lord, mostly in song, but in prayer as well. And that's what gives me sanity. And I try to focus on what I am able to do, but not the things that I can't do, because I can't do anything about those things. And it can be a little frustrating at times, but I turn my eyes toward Jesus, and he comforts me and looks after me, leads me and guides me. And he's opened doors for us. My wife and I are involved in a ministry we call drop-in prayer here, church where people just come in on a Tuesday night, and we will pray for their needs. We've got a team of people that pray for their needs, and he's opened many wonderful doors for us. So that's what keeps me going.
That's beautiful. Don, anything to add?
Well, Elgin is just an amazing prayer warrior, a good friend. I've learned a lot of things even today during the interview, but I'll tell you, I was amazed that Elgin, for example, being blind, he will cook his own meals. He will be able to cook on the stove. He'll do all the kind of things that I would think would be incredibly dangerous and difficult. And Elgin's been able to master a lot of those things. So sitting beside me is a guy who's pretty determined. If he played against Jean Beliveau and was able to tough that out, I think that he's done really well in his life and his spiritual life, serving the Lord and with his family. So I'm blessed to call him my friend, and I'm pretty proud of this guy beside me.
Anybody that is watching or happens to watch this, taste and see that the Lord is good.